Welcome back. Addie. Dylan was a good kisser. He never used too much tongue and he kept most of his spit to himself. Unlike fucking Todd Rowe, who practically drowned her every time they made out. Most of the time, she wished they could stick with the kissing part. Maybe a hand on her boob or whatever. But Dylan, like most guys, wasn't content with that. And since they'd been dating for almost a year and she wasn't a virgin, she didn't really have a good excuse to say no. Oh, she knew she could say no, but it wasn't worth the grief she'd get after. Cock tease. That was a favorite for the guys at school to throw around, but they liked blue baller too. And just plain bitch. She didn't know if Dylan was the type to say that crap or write it in comments on her Instagram posts. But let's face it, he probably was. Hey, he said, shifting her upward on his lap, his hands snaking between her legs. Open the window a little, getting hot in here. Addie waited for Dylan to turn the car on, then pressed the button for the windows. Cool autumn air blew in, pebbling her nipples. Dylan made a guttural sound, lowered his head, and pulled down the cups of her bra. Okay. This part she didn't mind, her back arching against the steering wheel, Dylan's fingers slipping inside her. She felt something building. Everything below her waist slowly tightened. But within seconds, she knew already that she was chasing it too hard, could feel the tension turning into disappointment almost as soon as it started. Maybe if he could ever actually get her there, she wouldn't mind the sex part as much. But as it was, she usually had to go home and take care of business herself. That's it, baby, Dylan said, oblivious. That's it. Addie looked at him, debating whether to fake it or get it over with, or let him keep trying. When his head rocketed sideways at the same time, her ears rang from a sudden burst of noise. She stared, watched Dylan's brain seep down the side of his face, the top of his skull shorn away. What? Her voice was strangely calm because this could not actually be happening. Dylan was playing some kind of Halloween prank. This was not real. She saw movement out of the open window and turned her head. A dark shadow, a bright flash, and then she was slumping sideways. A hum filled her head, her vision going white and then black. A hand on her arm pulling, something on her skin tracing, touching. She smelled blood and metal. She heard footsteps walking away. Then nothing, and nothing, and nothing. Chapter 13. Joanne Sawtelle wasn't a hoarder, but she was probably only a few wrong turns from becoming one. When I was growing up, her house was always filled to the brim with knickknacks and finds from whatever garage sale was going on around town. Before he left, Ryan's dad had kept her hoarder tendencies in line. She'd go out grocery shopping and come home to find he dragged a trash bag full of what she deemed treasures and he deemed crap to the town dump. Nowadays, it was up to Ryan to curb her enthusiasms, although I suspected he used a softer touch than his douchebag dad. I knew they drove Ryan crazy, but I always secretly liked Joanne's collections. The pale pink hobnailed tumblers, an ancient set of Nancy Drews, and a tiny ballerina figurines that took up all the surface area on her sideboard. Her house was like a scavenger hunt where you never knew what you might stumble across. Like when I was a kid, I barely bothered knocking when I showed up on her back porch, already pulling the screen door open and yelling a greeting into her empty kitchen. She was the one person I hadn't run into since I've been back, and I wanted to make sure I said hello, especially because I still wasn't sure how much longer I'd be home. When she bustled in from the living room, she threw her hands up in the air, a huge smile flashing across her face. "Greer," she said, "come here and give me a hug." She smelled the same as ever, a little musty and a little like cheap drugstore perfume. A homey scent, comforting and familiar. She looked about the same too. Long gray hair, now streaked with some white, curled up in a thick bun on top of her head. Excuse me. Clothes that were always a little too bohemian for Ludlow, flowy skirts and tunic tops, clogs in all season, a string of bright purple beads around her neck holding her multicolored reading glasses. Pulling back, Joanne winked at me, her hand still gripping my upper arm. Look at you. Where has the time gone? I swear, sometimes I glance at Ryan and think, shouldn't you still be 10? She laughed, the sound, as always, reminded me of bells, lights, and musicals. She ushered me into her living room, telling me over her shoulder that she was cleaning out some things. She sounded proud of herself, but I can hear Ryan's voice in my mind. She's only clearing out so she'll have room to add. But because she wasn't my mother, I was apt to give Joanne more slack. I found her endearing rather than aggravating. I wondered if Ryan felt the same way about my parents, if he harbored the same kind of forgiving tenderness towards them that I felt for his mother. Where's Ryan? I asked. Still sleeping? Generally, this would be my cue to run up the stairs and wake him, make fun of his bed head and drool-encrusted pillow. No, actually, he had to go to work this morning, supposed to be his day off, but Chet got a hair up his ass about something. Joanne raised her eyebrows. You know how Chet can be. Poor Ryan. I don't know how he stands it. I love Chet, but he can be a lot. I think it's been good for Ryan, actually. Maybe not the Chet part, but being back here spending time with you and Cassie. He was pretty raw after the split. I can imagine. I watched as she stacked a few books and a couple of empty picture frames and put them in a box already labeled donate. And everyone being back has been good for Cassie too, Joanne continued. After you and Ryan left, I think she got lonely. She stopped by and bring me dinner from the diner sometimes, sit with me and reminisce. But I was a poor substitute for the two of you. I never really thought about Cassie being in Ludlow without us. Never considered that it might have been hard for her. Mainly because she always seemed fine when we touched base, busy with work, spending time with her parents and nieces and nephews, making a life for herself. She never expressed any resentment at us leaving her behind. And I knew, even if given the chance, she wouldn't have followed. But that didn't mean it hadn't stung to have us so far away. At least Ryan had come back to visit regularly, which was a lot more than I could claim. Joanne paused in her sorting, picking up a frame that still had a photo in it. One of Ryan and Bethany on their wedding day. I had such high hopes for them, she said, even though I knew it wasn't going to end well. She held up the photo where I could see it. Ryan looked stiff and uncomfortable in his rental tuxedo, a fake smile plastered on his face. He'd always hated having his picture taken. Bethany looked lovely as always. That was never a problem. It was when she opened her mouth that things usually got dicey. How did you know it wasn't going to work out? I asked. The divorce still felt like such a touchy subject with Ryan. Neither Cassie nor I had been able to bring ourselves to ask the questions we were dying to have answers to. It was the first time he brought her here to visit. I overheard them talking after they thought I'd gone to bed. She called Ludlow a dump. I prefer shithole, but tomato, I said with a shrug, putting the framed photo into the box. Nobody in this house needed a reminder of Bethany staring at them every day. Joanne laughed, shaking her head. You kids can make fun of Ludlow all you like, but it's still where you're from, where you grew up. Ryan will run Ludlow into the ground all day, but he can't stand it when other people haven't got anything good to say about the place he was raised. Bethany's attitude about Ludlow was the tip of the iceberg. I'm surprised they made it as long as they did. She gave me a sharp look, but you didn't hear that from me. Of course not, I said. I'd always been good at keeping confidence, even from my closest friends. And Bethany didn't need him, Joanne continued. Didn't even bother pretending like she did. You know me, I'm all for women's lib, but Ryan likes to feel needed. probably because he grew up taking care of me, being the man of the house. That's the last thing his worthless dad said to him, on his way out the door. She lowered her voice to a gruff growl. You're the man around here now. She shook her head as her tone returned to normal. 7 years old and the bastard lays that on him? I tried to tell Ryan I didn't need him to take care of me and that I was an adult and he was a kid. But he took those words to heart. And then he married a woman who didn't really need him for anything. They were a mismatch from the start. I bet she loved hearing I was back here, I said. She always did hate Cassie and me. Joanne's brows furrowed. I don't think that's true. The three of you together are a hard nut to crack is all for someone on the outside. For the first time, I wonder what it might have been like to step into our thick as thieves threesome. Even with my years-long absence, and Ryan moved to Kansas City, we were still tightly knit. I'd always liked to think that it was Bethany herself who was the problem, her personality the reason she never clicked with us. The first time Cassie and I met her, Bethany's face tightened up every time Cassie made a sex reference or I called Ryan a name. Rather than making her feel included, which I like to believe had been our goal, our informality offended her, created a barrier none of us had ever managed to breach. But maybe it was an impossible ask for another person who hadn't grown up with us, who didn't know all of our inside jokes and tangled histories, to somehow seamlessly join our group and belong. It was possible, too, that none of us had really wanted her to fit in, not even Ryan. It took us most of the afternoon to fill a single box with items Joanne deemed worthy of donating. Old books, a few picture frames, a couple of moth-eaten sweaters. I volunteered to drop it off for her, mainly because I had a feeling she'd end up keeping it forever if I didn't take it away. As I carried the box to my car, the wind blew, a sudden sharp gust, and a clatter of browning leaves fell to the sidewalk. True autumn was fast approaching. I wonder if I'd still be in Ludlow come winter. I wonder if I wanted to be. Let me take a sip, y'all. When I came around the corner on Main and saw Chet on the sidewalk talking to Merle Stafford, I didn't exactly skid to a stop, but I came pretty damn close. They hadn't noticed me yet, Merle making wide sweeping gestures with his hands and Chet nodding along sympathetically. I was debating walking backwards, retracing my steps to get out of saying hello, when Merle looked over and pinned me with his dead-eyed stare. Chet followed his gaze and waved when he saw me. Greer, he called. Good morning, darling. Merle said nothing. Even as I waved and moved closer, I knew he remembered me. Merle wasn't the kind of guy to forget a face. You can tell he cataloged everyone he met, kept them filed away for possible later use. I wonder if he was going to out me, tell Chet I'd been nosing around his place with Dean Matthews. But Merle proved to be as silent and charming as ever, spitting a wad of something disgusting onto the sidewalk and walking away before I reached him. I'd asked if you pissed in his cornflakes, Chet says, eyes roaming from Merle retreating back to my face. But that's Merle. If he ever gave somebody a pleasant greeting, the whole town died of shock. How do you know him? I asked. Chet scratched at his stumble-marked chin. Can't honestly say. It's like with most old-timers around here. I've known him so long I can't even put my finger close to where or when we first met. Merle just always been a fixture, Chet shrugged. He's an ornery old coot, but that's all right by me. I don't really remember Merle being around when I was growing up. I had memories of Stafford's, or at least of hearing about it, but Merle wasn't a face I'd known before Dean introduced us. It was only right now that I realized how strange that was in a town of Ludlow size. Well, Merle keeps to himself most of the time. Chet said, his gaze shifting away from mine, and that wasn't like Chet to try to change the subject. Generally, he settled right in and stayed for a while. His evasiveness made me want to lean in, stick my nose where he obviously thought it didn't belong. And why's that? I asked. Oh, he had some trouble with the law. It was a long time ago. No use rehashing. What kind of trouble? Chet shook his head. You know I don't like telling tales out of school. I managed to hold in my laugh, but barely. I won't say a word, I said, crossing my fingers over my heart for good measures. That was all Chet needed to get rolling. He fiddled around with some underage girl a time or two, probably 20 years ago at least. My head jerked back, my mouth twisted. Like rape? No, Chet said. Or at least not that I ever heard. More like lurking around, making them uncomfortable, maybe copping a feel here and there. As if that was any better, Jesus Christ. He never went to jail? Nobody wanted to take it that far. The girls and their families just wanted it to stop. So Baker told him to keep his hands to himself, knock that shit off, or Baker knock it off for him. Far as I know, that was the end of it. I felt scared when Merle's gaze had landed on me too hard, but now I felt squeamish too, a little sick. Had he ever looked at Eliza or Addie that way? And what would it mean if he had? Could he have been involved in the latest murders? I asked. Nah, Chet said. Merle ain't no killer, but that's part of the reason he was in such a foul mood today. Cops been out talking to him about Dylan and Addie. He says he kept his part of the bargain, so he doesn't appreciate Baker getting up in his business. But like I told him, they have to ask the question, just doing their jobs. The bell on the diner door jangled and Ryan came out, a couple of to-go cups in his hand. Hey, he said when he spotted me, I would have grabbed you a coffee if I'd known you were out here. That's okay, I said, leaning in to give him a quick kiss on the cheek, pushing my worries about Merle aside for the moment. I saw your mom yesterday. I thought since you were working then, you might get off today. I thought so too. But my boss here is a taskmaster extraordinaire. Ryan handed one of the cups to Chet. Come on now, Chet said. You told me you didn't mind. We're already behind from what? I asked, giving Ryan a quizzical look when Chet let his comment hang in the air. From Dylan, Chet finished. Dylan Short. That third pair of hands came in handy. A belated God rest his soul after Chet took a sip of coffee. Dylan was helping with your house? Sure was, Chet said. He handed his cup back to Ryan. Hold this a second. I'm going to run into the grocery and get a few things while we're here. Won't be but a minute. Ryan let out a long-suffering sigh, but took the cup without saying anything, at least while Chet was within earshot. The second he disappeared through the grocery doors, Ryan turned to me. Like it's not bad enough he came around pounding on my door this morning after having me work yesterday, and now we're wasting time running errands? Fucking Chet. But he sounded more amused than annoyed, a little grin on his face instead of a scowl. You told me you didn't know Dylan. I said, huh? That night in your gazebo, when I first got back to town, you said you didn't really know him. That's because I didn't. He stared at me, waiting a beat. Are you accusing me of something? I wanted to deny it, but I was making an accusation, wasn't I? Then he lied to me, that he was hiding something. But Chet just said he was working on a house with you guys. Ryan shook his head like he was trying to shake away this conversation, or maybe the fact that I would question him this way. He said Dylan was helping with the house, and he was, but mainly on the weekends when I wasn't around. Occasionally after school, but he did stuff like painting once I was done with the more difficult work. We were rarely on the same part of the project. I don't think we ever had a conversation beyond, "Hey, how you doing?" I told you as much as I knew about him that night in the gazebo, Greer. I wasn't trying to hide anything. "Okay," I said, no longer able to meet his eyes. "I know you're going through something," Ryan said. "But for future references, if you want an answer, just ask me." "I did ask you." He raised his eyebrows at me. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Greer." He looked uncharacteristically serious, seemed torn between sadness and anger. It was on the tip of my tongue to apologize, but my mouth stayed stubbornly closed. Okay. The morning of the fall festival dawned as one of those picture-perfect Midwestern autumn days. The sun clear and bright in a cut-glass blue sky, but there was an ever-so-slight edge to the air, nipping lightly at my nose and the tip of my ears. I could smell the faint scent of wood smoke floating in from somewhere in the distance. Every time I sipped a pumpkin spice latte in Chicago, this is what I've been longing for. I agreed to meet Cassie and Ryan in front of the caramel apple stand, and when I found them, Cassie was already halfway through her apple and a string of caramel stuck to her chin. "Here," she said, thrusting the apple at me. "I got you one." "Don't bother arguing with her," Ryan said. "You know how crazy she get at this thing." I couldn't fault Cassie for her enthusiasm. The fall festival was my favorite Ludlow tradition too. The 4th of July always made me anxious when inevitably half of the town drank too much and someone ended up lighting a firecracker in their hand and blowing off a finger. And the Easter parades was a surprise and stuffy affair. Everyone decked out in scrunchy dresses with lace collars or last year's suits too tight in the crotch and shoulders. We'd stand around sweating in unseasonable heat or freezing in an unexpected snowstorm. But the fall festival was always joyful. Donut holes and face painting, a hay bale maze set up in the park, and a makeshift pumpkin patch at the end of Maine. It felt like the moment when all of Ludlow came together to simply have a good time. The last one I attended had been the week before Eliza died. For once, it had been just Eliza and me. Travis had a family wedding to attend, and everyone else had plans. We got in our faces painted and stumbled laughing through the maze while the sun went down. It had been a brief magical glimpse into the sisterhood I'd always assumed we'd have one day. But instead of being the start of something for Eliza and me, it turned out to be only a prelude to the end. I followed dutifully behind Ryan and Cassie as we walked along Main Street. The three of us trying our hand at a ring toss, sharing a powdered sugar encrusted funnel cake, and getting temporary tattoos applied to our cheeks. I kept waiting for the right moment to bring up Dean. Now that we all were together, it was only a matter of time before word got out, and I wanted them to hear it from me first. Part of me wondered if they already knew, but they seemed oblivious. Or maybe they didn't want to ruin the day. Either way, in the absence of confrontation, I was left with an odd barbed tension that made everything, even simple conversations, feel harder than it should have. "Want to do dunk tank?" Cassie asked, peeling off a strip of Ryan cotton candy and stuffing it in her mouth. "No way," Ryan said, swatting her away. "But I'll happily watch you get soaked." "I'll meet you guys over there," I told them. "I'm going to hit the bathroom." "Porta potties are that-a-way," Cassie said, making a vague gesture with her hands. I headed in the direction she instructed, although I didn't really need to use the bathroom. What I was looking for was a few minutes of quiet, not a toilet. I spied a picnic table in the shade of an oak tree, only one spot on the bench occupied. As I got closer, I realized it was Sheriff Baker camped out there. He was in civilian clothes and clutching a huge teddy bear. "Looks like you made a new friend," I told him. "Grandkids," he said with a shake of his head. He scooted down the bench. Here, make yourself comfortable. You're enjoying your day? Yeah, I guess so. I said, it seems smaller than I remembered. Well, you're a big city girl now. I'm guessing everything in Ludlow feels small. Maybe that's it. Or maybe I would never again be able to see my hometown the way I had before Eliza died, back when it had been safe and magical and my life made sense. It's good to see you out here, Baker said. Saw you three earlier getting your face tattooed. He pointed at my cheek. Always thought butterflies were Eliza's favorite though. Seemed to recall you preferred bees. My hand fluttered upward, cupping my cheeks. Oh yeah, well, I guess I was in a butterfly mood today. Anyway, Baker said, I'm glad you're spending time with your friends. As opposed to what? Lurking in the bushes and spying on people? Hey now, I didn't say that. I raised my eyebrows, but it's what you meant. Baker sighed. It's like I told you the other day at the station. Nothing good can come of going backwards is all. It's time to move on. Easier said than done. Well, I can't argue with that, he said. Most things are, but doesn't mean it's not worth trying. He sifted a yarn behind his closed fist. Sorry about that, not sleeping like I should. Work? I asked. If the past was anything to go by, he was burning the midnight oil over the latest murders. Yep. Are you looking at Merle Stafford? Baker stared at me. Why would we be looking at Merle? I signed, wishing we could skip the part where he pretended not to know anything just so he wouldn't accidentally give something away. Because he has a thing for teenage girls. Maybe stalking or molesting them wasn't enough for him anymore. We're looking at every lead, Greer, Baker said finally. Every single one. Does that mean you don't think Merle was involved? Or that you do? He gave me a warning look. You know I'm not going to talk about this with you. Was there anything different this time around? Why Dylan and Addie? Anything that stood out? I'm free next Saturday, he said. Can take you out to Murdoch's Pond. We can work on your fishing skills. That surprised a laugh out of me. Hey, it was worth a try. Maybe. But only a fish a lot dumber than me. I ignored that. Do you think it was someone local? Baker huffed. You are relentless, and I don't think much of anything yet. I will say, it's a lot easier to solve a double murder when the killer's brother marches right into the police station and turns him in. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened this time. It took a few seconds for what he said to sort itself out inside my head. Exactly. Wait, what? Dean Matthews turned Roy in? Baker looked at me, surprise running across his face. How could you not know that? It was in the paper, and they talked about it at the trial. I didn't. I shook my head. I don't. I don't have a lot of clear memory from back then. Certain things I could recall with the kind of crisp, clean clarity of a photograph. Baker knocking on the front door and the sound of my mother's scream. The stiff black dress I wore to the funerals. Roy Matthews' face in the morning paper. The blood red heart on our hallway floor. But I couldn't remember my own reaction to the news of Eliza's death. Couldn't recall a single word of the article that accompanied Roy's photograph in the paper. Could conjure up only small flashes of the trial. The back of Dean's head, his grandma crying on the witness stand, Roy shuffling out after the guilty verdict. I didn't recall ever hearing that Dean had been the one to hand Roy over to the police. I wonder how much that had cost him. I watched the father across from us hoist his daughter up on his shoulders, her spindly legs dangling around his neck while he clenched a pool of pink cotton candy. A cheer went up as a teenage boy emerged victoriously from an apple bobbing bucket next to them. Water plastered his shirt to his narrow chest. The sun filtered down, warm and bright, turning the whole street to gold. If I'd been back in Ludlow for any other reason, it would have been a glorious day. I swear, one of these years somebody is going to drown trying to get those damn apples. They're slippery suckers, Baker said. He slapped his knee with his teddy bear free hand. Guess I better go rejoin the fray. Wait, I said. Can I ask you something before you go? It's not about the murders. He glanced at me. Okay, he said, but the words came out reluctant, like he was already anticipating the turn this conversation was taking. Did my dad have life insurance on Eliza? Baker rested one elbow on the back of the bench, angling his body towards mine. Have to admit, that was not the question I was expecting. Have you asked your dad about this? No, I scoffed. The other night he thought Eliza was still alive. He's not exactly the most reliable source for information. Baker paused, seemed to weigh what he said before he opened his mouth. He did have life insurance on Eliza. I wasn't surprised. Chet was a talker, but he wasn't a liar. But my stomach sank all the same. Just on her, not on me too? He planned on getting it for both of you. That was the year before Chet retired, and he was giving everyone in town the hard sell on life insurance. We all regretted if our whole family wasn't covered, blah, blah, blah. He managed to wear your dad down at some point, and he brought the policy for Eliza, but he couldn't really afford it, so he never followed through on yours. I don't think he ever anticipated using it. He did it more as a favor and probably figured it was the quickest way to get Chet to shut his yapper about it. He brought Eliza's first because she was older. Baker shook his head. Turned out to be the unluckiest of lucky guesses. Why wouldn't he have mentioned it to me? The better question is why would he have? You were 16 years old, Greer. What business was it of yours? Besides, it wasn't a windfall, for God's sake. It was enough to cover the cost of Eliza's funeral and keep the store afloat a little longer. He squinted at me, realization swimming into his eyes. Oh, good Lord, don't tell me you're suspicious of your father now. I didn't say that, I said, glancing away. I knew my father would have died before he ever hurt Eliza, but I also thought I'd known him inside and out. I never imagined that Chet and Ryan would be privy to facts about him that were news to me. It made him feel even further away than he had before. Baker reached over and gave my shoulder a gentle shake. Greer, sweetheart, come on now. You don't really think your dad had something to do with Eliza's murder, do you? Because that would be what? I demanded. Crazy? Nuts? I'm off my rocker? I know that's what you want to say, just like you wanted to say it after Eliza died. Never thought you were crazy, he said, calm, looking at me with those eyes that always made me feel stripped naked. Every secret or bad thought you ever had right there on display. It reminded me of a conversation I'd overheard years ago between my dad and Chet when I was stocking cans at the store. How my dad said Baker was the perfect sheriff because he knew people's bad deeds before they did. One glance from Baker, Chet chimed in, and people start confessing things they haven't ever done yet, running their mouths so fast they about beat their own gums to death. Well, that might have been most people, but it sure as hell wasn't going to be me. Not yet, or maybe not ever. I was starting to wonder if I'd ever have the strength to shine a light into all the hidden corners of my mind and lay bare what lurked in the shadows. I stood up with a jerk, sending the teddy bear spilling onto the grass. Never thought you were crazy, sweetheart, Baker repeated to my back as I walked away. Thought you were grieving is all, and having trouble finding your way out. At his words, I was 16 again, sobbing into my pillow at night and leaning hard on dark humor during the day, keeping my face a careful blank when I heard someone call Eliza a dirty whore, while inside bile rose fast in my throat, missing my parents with a fierceness that stole my heart, even as we sat right next to one another. 14 years later, I guess some things never change. And that's the end of chapter 13. Okay. All right. So I had a theory. I had thought. Well, no, I didn't have I did have a theory. But anyway, she found out that the dad had purchased the policy on Eliza because he might have been pressured and he didn't get one on her. Now, there are some questions I have. And y'all gonna get a video of my questions because I have to, get it together. So stay tuned for the questions in the next clip. Bye for now. Okay, I'm back and I got some questions. Okay, first off, Greer said that she was good at keeping confidence and secrets. Is that why she won't allow her memories to come through? Because she knows something? I'm starting to think maybe she did it. I'm starting because, you know what? Not necessarily a suspect, but grief and tragedy stops at that moment, and people reaction to it is different. So maybe she don't want it to come forward because she don't want to relive it. So that could be the reason why she says she good at keeping secrets. Okay, next. What was Merle and Chet talking about? And why Merle treat Greer that way? I can't quite remember. Okay, I know that's his personality. He a nasty little, mean man and stuff like that. But why he look at her like that and treat her like that? What she do? I don't know. Okay, and also during the conversation that Greer and Chet was having, did Chet seem like he was lying about how he met Merle? Because remember, we think two people committed these crimes, right? And I'm just like, well, it seemed like he was trying to act like he don't remember when he actually do remember. And he changed the subject real quick, and that was that to distract Greer so she won't keep asking him questions? I don't know. And knowing the history of Merle, right? And Eliza having something to tell Greer, and then her friend seeing a picture of an arm, and then another friend thinking that Eliza was changing and keeping secrets. Could Merle have been, bothering her? And could he have gotten jealous? And, I don't know. Also, Dean turned Roy in? What? Why would he turn his brother in? Okay. Family turn family in all the time, right? But because Dean is on my suspect list, that was kind of suspect. And why wouldn't she remember it? Well, grief. Okay, I was shocked when that came about. Okay, and also, does it matter if Ryan didn't know Dylan, as well as, Greer is making it seem because Ryan said he didn't know him, but he explained why he wouldn't know him because they were working different shifts and stuff like that. But why did Greer react that way? Yeah, I don't get why she reacted that way. Okay, last question. What did Greer mean at the end of the book when she said that Sheriff Baker wouldn't get a secret out of her, not yet or ever? She either knows something or she keeping things to herself so she can figure it out, or she was involved in her sister and Travis's death, which is hard for me to put my finger around because the other murder of Addie and Dylan. Was she really gone for 14 years? Okay, so that's it of my questions. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Until next chapter, bye for now.